tell us about yourself. How did you get into casting? What was just give us your like quick bio.
Yeah, so I went to NYU for musical theater and I started as an actor. And then I realized a few years in that I wasn't passionate about being on stage, but I was still passionate about the industry and about musical theater. So through various internships and administrative jobs in the arts that I took, I landed an internship with Joy doing casting, which then turned into a full-time job, and then which then led to me moving over to Wojcik B casting for a year to help with the transition after Joy closed her office. And then that led to when Tara's office was undergoing change, when Eric Whitall and Lindsay Levine left and she was looking to hire, then I got brought in at that point. I've been there ever since.
Cool. So walk us through the process of Tara's office. Dog. Hey, of Tara's office.
Sorry.
You're good. My son's upstairs, like making lots of noise. So I'm trying to mute myself between questions. Walk us through the process of Tara's office casting a show from like the reading through Broadway. Like who makes the lists? How do you find the people? How much?
Yeah, so a show in development, it starts with any sort of numerous reading. So it's everything from a one-day table read where they just say, give us a list of actors who are going to come in just for the day, and we'll sit around a table and we'll read the version of the script we have, and we won't sing any of the songs, and we'll just play the demos, and we just want to hear it out loud. And so that is a lot of just making lists, and we sit and we have conversations with the director and the producer and the writers, and we send them a list of 20 names for a role, and they come back and they say, we like 5 of these, and then we keep those 5 and then we add 20 more. And that happens for sort of the one-day table reads. And then at some point it'll go into a 29-hour reading, which is usually a week long. And the equity rule is you can work for 29 hours in I think it's a 5-day period. And again, that's usually, there's no staging. It's just actors at a music stand, learning the music, reading it. A lot of 29-hour readings are also just cast from lists. It's very rare to hold auditions at that point in the process. So it's just actors we know, actors the director knows, actors the writers know. Then we start to get into what is now by equity called developmental work sessions. I think they're called work sessions. It's what the old lab or workshops used to be. And there's 3 tiers of those based on how much staging and choreography there is. And there's rules with the union about, it's like how basically how off book you can be and how many numbers can be staged. And so based on where the producers and director feel the show is in development, is what sort of work session they do. At that point, we'll start usually holding auditions. So they'll keep some actors from the reading, or some actors from the reading will choose not to continue. They'll get something else, or there's all sorts of reasons as to why we recast at that stage. But usually for the work sessions, we start the audition process, which includes the required equity calls. So those are the EPAs and the ECCs, both singer and dancer. Again, the amount of days and what calls are determined by equity based on the production. So a show like Dear Evan Hansen that doesn't have a chorus, there's no need to hold a chorus call for that. We just do, part of the EPAs. And then from there, from the work session stage, it goes back sort of into development. There's some more rewriting to be had. They might do another work session, or then they start taking it out of town and taking it to regional theaters, or determining that they're going to do a off-Broadway run or a tour. And there's more recasting that could potentially happen at that stage. And then ultimately, hopefully getting to Broadway. And at any stage in the process, based on what auditions we hold, it's just dependent on how many people they keep on. Sometimes they'll say, we love this actor, but let's just see who else is out there. And so we'll hold auditions, and then we'll say, nope, we'll stick with the actor we have. So really, it's all dependent on that. Once and equity changes, not changes, but equity, whether we go back into the required calls at any given stage is dependent on a numerous amount of factors and what equity tells us. So it's not always, there's not always the required EPAs and ECCs at every stage in the developmental process.
What do you think actors should be doing now? Like being stuck at home, having a lot of time. Obviously, we all need to deal with our own like mental and physical health issues, but what should we be doing to get better at our careers? Or
this is such a good time for research. Go and research the actors of the past. Go and research styles of the past. Watch those YouTube videos. I mean, I was listening to an older casting director talk recently about this, that even in my generation, I mean, I grew up with the technology very similar to what we all have now, like, but 20 years ago, like actors didn't have the resources that we have nowadays. So be doing that research. What shows are you passionate about? Who came before you? Who set the trends? What is it? Study them, analyze them. Learn about old shows that you don't know. Listen to those cast recordings so that when the revival comes around, you're informed and you know the style and you understand the period. Research composers. We're kind of gifted this weird grad school time, if you will, of, we all got out of school and we immediately like pounded the pavement in our career, and our days became about taking dance class and going to acting class and going to auditions and going to the theater at night. And now we can't really do any of that. So all of that studying that we stopped doing when we graduated college can start up again. I also think there's ways to be training. And I think that I know I've been seeing online, like voice teachers are offering Skype lessons and Zoom lessons. And they're doing it for either free or really discounted rates right now. So if you felt like the past couple of years you haven't been able to afford voice lessons because voice lessons in New York City are so expensive, start up again. Take a lesson a week if you can, if you have those resources. Find teachers that are maybe some younger teachers that are taking this time to have always wanted to become voice teachers and are offering free lessons. Like, take a lesson with them. Build your book. Do you feel like your book is stale right now? Well, now's your time to do research and learn new songs. It's a really good time to kind of rejuvenate why we're doing this in the first place and what our passions about this industry are, and not worrying about getting a job necessarily, because right now there are no jobs to be had. There will be again, and that's the thing to keep in mind. So how are you going to be ready when to start up again? I don't necessarily think I think we have to also still think about this from a business perspective. And that's what's the most uncertain right now, is the business side of our industry. The art side is still there. Have you always wanted to write? This is your time to write. Have you always wanted to, I've been seeing people are like pulling old plays off the shelf and are getting together with friends and just doing like Zoom readings of these old plays. Like, this is the time to focus on your art, not the business. This is not the time to try to, send out mailings to agents trying to get an agent if you don't have one, or to try to send mailings to casting directors just saying hi. Like, there's no work really happening from a business perspective right now. So don't worry about that, because that'll come back again. Worry about setting yourself up to be super successful when it does come back.
Cool. This question came up a couple times with people. What's the best way for actors who don't have a relationship with your office to establish a relationship with your office, to get in your good graces, get on your lists so you get callbacks?
So normally, not in a quarantined coronavirus situation, the best way to get on our radar is to come to the calls we provide you. So the EPAs, the ECCs, or the open calls. Come to the calls for the shows that you are appropriate for, and do good work. And by do good work, I mean, like, come prepared, come and show your best self. And you do that enough times and we'll remember you, and we'll start to put you in the files for things. That is not to say that if you come to an audition, if you come to an EPA and you have one of those days that we've all had, where you're like, you walk out of the room and you're just like, that was not it, that we will then blacklist you. Like, I can't stress that enough. I say this all the time. I need you, I think, almost more than you need me in this. Like, I have to have actors that I can audition and cast. And so all my job is to go out there and meet you and to assess what it is you do best so that I can then present you and your best work to a director. So if you come in and you have an off day, I would be doing myself such a disservice if I put you on a list and said, never see this person again, because I would quickly run out of actors in the city, because I promise you, everyone has bad days. So that's how you get to know it. It's just coming to the audition. Right now, with the way things are, I know we've set up a lot of email submissions to collect tapes. Like the Dear Evan Hansen website has a way to submit a tape. The Disney on Broadway website has a way to submit a tape for their shows. We've posted some others, like we have a new show in development, Mr. Saturday Night. So that we're collecting tapes for. And what's happening is, I'm monitoring the Dear Evan Hansen tapes, Felicia's monitoring the Aladdin tapes, but like she just forwarded me one the other day and was like, this person would be good for Dear Evan Hansen. So if you send in a great tape, it could, even if you're not end up perfect for that show, it could get passed on to someone for a show that you are right for. So if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, my career is at a complete standstill right now until this is all over, go online and see who's taking those tapes. And if you're right for that project, submit a tape.
This is a big, broad question, but speaking of open calls, ECCs, EPAs, what draws you to an actor?
Specificity, both in their material selection and their acting choices. I always say when you're going to an EPA or an ECC, you need to walk in auditioning for one role in that show. Giving a general, this is my Les Mis audition, this is my Aladdin audition, it's just not going to help us place you in that show. Even when you're auditioning for summer stock, I talk about this a lot. If you're going in for a 5-show season, pick one role in one show that you think you're most right for. Because if you then become the answer to my prayers for that one role, my job and the artistic director's job is to figure out how to put you in the other 4 shows, and we will if we want you badly enough for that one role. If you come in and you just sing your best 16 bars, you're not telling us enough about where you see yourself in the season. And it's like, great, they're super talented, but I'm not entirely sure what to do with them here. So that's how you stand out. When you come in, if you come in for Dear Evan Hansen, tell me, do you think you're an Evan? Do you think you're a Jared? Do you think you're a Connor? Those are 3 very different characters. They all have similarities, but if you just come in and sing contemporary musical theater, and I don't know you, I'm having to make a lot of really rapid fire guessing decisions where if you come in and you're like, I'm funny and I'm odd and I'm awkward and I'm sarcastic and I want to be Jared, then I'm like, great, that's such a Jared. Let's call him back for Jared. And then if you do the Jared material and I'm like, oh, that's not quite a right fit, but he's still good, maybe he's a Connor, I can figure that out from there. That's what the audition callback process is about. It's taking somebody we think is really great and really cool and really interesting, and I'm spending every time in the room with you trying to figure out how to get you into the show.
A couple people submitted this question, and I think the answer is show dependent, but I'll let you speak more to it. But specifically pop rock material. Would you rather a good story or incredible singing? I mean, those can live together, but which one? It depends on the show, but what do you feel about that?
Yeah, so the pop rock thing, the industry can't agree on this, which is okay. But everyone has very different opinions about pop rock. And it's starting to become a little bit more show to show as these shows are getting a little bit more, with contemporary musical theater, it's getting closer and closer to pop rock. Like with each passing year, I feel like. So there's more specificity in it, but this is my opinion on pop rock. As somebody, and I say this, and these are the pop rock shows that I've cast. I've done Rent, Kinky Boots, Dear Evan Hansen. Like, those are the 3 big ones where we ask for pop rock material. I don't want to see you act a pop rock song. Here's why. Number one, when we're asking for pop rock material for a contemporary musical theater show like Rent, Kinky Boots, and Dear Evan Hansen, which have contemporary musical theater scores, but we still ask for pop rock, we're doing it because we want to hear the pop rock sensibility in your voice, and we want you to have a certain vocal ability and styling that'll lend itself to the show. The note that actors get in this industry all the time from music departments is that they sound too musical theater-y, or they feel too musical theater-y. And that especially happens when you're going in for shows like We Will Rock You, or even Rent, or like a Rock of Ages, where it's actually a truly pop rock score. You have to be believable as a rock singer. And so if you come in and you're acting your pop rock song, it's kind of a hats on hats situation where it becomes a very musical theater feel to it. And then the note is, oh, well, they're so musical theater-y. So the trick, I say, is fool is into thinking that you're actually like a rock star and just don't act the song. You know, Britney Spears has never acted a song in her life. And so that's kind of why we do it. The other thing I talk a lot about is that you guys are so trained as actors that you don't know how to sing a lyric and not make sense of it. A rock and roll singer can sing lyrics and there's like no meaning behind them. They're just emoting, right? You guys don't know how to do that. So if you don't worry about the acting of a song, you'll still tell the story and you'll still convey the emotion behind the song in a way that makes sense. So don't worry about it when you walk in the room. So that's my perspective. The other thing about it too is in pop rock shows, that emotion is, even in contemporary musical theater shows, the emotion in the song comes from a different place than like an R&H show in a way. And so once we get into the meat of like you actually doing the show, then we can, we see the sides, and then when we give you the songs from the show, that's where you show your acting. But it's just a different storytelling technique, I think, which is why we ask for that pop rock material. I mean, it makes total sense for Rent. Rent, in a way, like there's numbers in Rent when we get into like the actual musical numbers of Rent and not the connecting like recitative numbers, that they kind of become standalone rock and roll songs. And even Dear Evan Hansen, in a way, waving through a window, Evan, it kind of transcends the story for a minute, and Evan has this moment of pure emotion. And good for you in the second act, these characters have this moment of pure emotion versus like narrative storytelling.
Is there something that you see actors do in the audition room that you wish you could just tell them to stop doing? Like something simple that actors do that's working against them?
Yes. I think, how do I put this? I think that if I woke up tomorrow and decided that I wanted to go back to being an actor, I'd like to think that I would never be nervous again in an audition. Because, and I was trying to like explain this to someone the other day, and I'm still working on my explanation of it, but I stand by it. When you walk into an audition room, I am so on your side and so desperately rooting for you and wanting you to be good, as is everyone else in the room, that I don't, now that I've done this on this side for so long, I've like my brain's rewired, and I don't understand why you're nervous, because you're walking into like a room of people that support you and are cheering for you. And we're way more forgiving in a room than I think you realize. I've never, ever had an actor crack or go up on a lyric or have to start and stop over and have them leave the room and have that be the reason they didn't get the call back or they didn't get the job. I've just never seen it. we're understanding. And so I wish that I want to figure out how we, obviously it's going to be nerve wracking because you're walking in a room full of people you don't know, and you've prepared and prepared and prepared, and you want it so badly. So from a human psyche place, it makes total sense. But I'm trying to figure out some like potion to give everyone so that everyone can just like walk in and be like, I'm amazing and I'm gonna do good work and here I go. Does that make sense? Like I've it's such a, I'm feeling as me like a human being sitting in that room, I'm so supportive of you and cheering for you that I'm like forgetting why you're nervous, even though fundamentally I understand why. And I think that if you do the work and you come in prepared, then you should have no reason to be nervous because like just show us what you're gonna do. And then it's exciting. And then it's like, great, either that's what we want and need or it's not. But if it's not, then it's okay because you're gonna have another audition tomorrow. Or we're gonna send you away for a year and try again in a year. So that's what it is. I think it's like just show up prepared and just have fun in the room because at the end of the day, it's musical theater, man. You know, we're not doctors walking into surgery. They're the ones that should be nervous, right? We should just be having fun.
That's very true. Kind of along those lines, as you get further down the line in casting a show, how you start to end up with a group of people that are all basically in the same, they're all super talented, they can all do the role. How do you start to whittle down who continues in the process, who ultimately gets the role once you get to those people that are all very talented and anyone can do it?
Yeah, it's, oh God, it's so many factors. I mean, with musical theater especially, and especially with the way the shows are crafted these days, a lot of it comes down to like who's gonna, especially for ensemble, like who's going to win out, the music department or the dance department, right? Because for the most part, every actor has a strength, whether it's vocal or dance ability. One's usually stronger than the other. So it's putting together the puzzle of like how many singers, how many dancers, what dance ability can the choreographer work with so that they get the singing ability and vice versa. So that the ensemble really becomes a puzzle piece. Who has coverage potential? Who, how does that all work? With principals, it really becomes, I mean, the director comes in, at some point in the process, I kind of lose any sort of authority or decision-making, I should say, because the director comes in and they have a vision of what they want. And my job is to present, obviously, a range of actors to fit that vision, but also I'm always trying to kind of push the boundary of that vision and maybe somebody's exciting that isn't quite necessarily what we originally discussed, but I think could potentially work. And so it's like, well, you said you wanted A and B, but what about C and that? And so when it comes to principals, it really starts to come down to what the director, how the director sees the piece coming together and who works well together and who do they see playing this role next to this role. And we really like the interesting choices this actor's making, and he reads better with this actress and she's just as good as the other actress, so he likes their dynamics together better. It's there's no science behind it, and it's never predictable. It's so often that you walk into the final callback day and I think I know who's going to get the job, and it turns out it's somebody else because of a million factors.
Can you talk a little bit along these lines about what a casting director actually does? Because I get a lot of people that tell me that they never get, Chelsea never hires me, Tara Rubin never hires me. Can you let the people know what your job actually is as you go along in the casting process closer to actually hiring a person?
Yeah. So my job is to listen to what the producer and creative team, meaning director, music director, choreographer, writers, how they envision the show, what kind of essence and style they like and see in the show, and then to go out and find the actors that I think that bill, whether it's actors I already know. So I just go to my Rolodex of names of people I love that I think are right for it, or going into the auditions and finding new talent and kind of cultivating all of that and all of those people and whittling it down to a pool of talent that I think when I finally line everyone up side by side and see what everyone brings to the table, who matches what I've been told they want as well. Casting is also a lot of scheduling, of getting bodies in the room, of just dealing with actors and saying, I think you should be seen for this, or the director wants to see you for this. Where are you? Are you here? Can you get in the room? Can we get a tape? How do we get you to show material? And then with the fancier Tony winning people, it's about having conversations with them about, what the production, where it's gonna go and where it's headed and what about it and how do they fit into it, and connecting them with the creative team and setting up phone calls and all of that. So it's half creative of assessing talent and sort of taking my eye and what I respond to and pairing that with what the director has told me, and also half administrative of just organizing bodies.
So much scheduling. Have you I think this question is aimed more towards new musicals and musicals in development. Have you ever had a creative team tell you what they are looking for in a role, but then had someone walk in that was completely not that, but completely change your mind on what that role is?
All the time, and especially in new musicals. Roles have been rewritten, ranges have been changed. It's that early on in the development process, especially early on in the development process, all you can do is just walk in the room and do your take on the character, because there's no precedent. You just have to be yourself. And then if they respond, even if it's what they didn't think they were going to want for it, if you're exciting and interesting, then they'll figure out a way to make it work. I read or I heard an interview with a television casting director like years ago, and she was talking about how do you book recurring or series regular on like a long-running television show. And the way to do that is you have to be somebody, and you have to bring something to the character that causes the writers to want to keep writing for that character. That's also like how, if you're a guest star or a co-star, you then can become recurring because you're so interesting and you bring something so interesting to the character that the writers like are inspired to write for it. And it's kind of the same thing when you're auditioning for developmental work. You kind of have to just be so interesting and so dynamic that you're going to inspire these writers to keep writing for you, and this director to build this show with you, because actors are really essential to the development of early musicals.
Do you ever overlook less than perfect vocal technique in lieu of amazing storytelling? Yes.
I mean, that's a tricky question. Musical theater is a very collaborative art form. And so everyone behind that table has a certain purpose and expertise that, when comes together, creates the art. I am, as a casting director, I'm looking for kind of the overall package of what you bring to the character. So interesting storytelling is gonna win out for me a lot of the time. And then it's up to the music director or the music supervisor to say, I have concerns about their vocal ability and sustaining 8 shows a week, which happens. However, sometimes I am told, and I know for a specific project, if you cannot sing it and you can't sing it a certain way, no matter how interesting or how good of an actor you are, you're never going to get the job. And then that's when it's heartbreaking for me, because I could love you and think you're amazing, but I just know that a music team's they're not going to go for it. And so I have to make that decision of not calling you back for that reason. I think ultimately for a long running career in musical theater, you have to have the vocal technique. If you look at all of the stars that have had the long-term careers, they're amazing vocal technicians. And even the ones that started out kind of raw and just doing their own thing eventually had to learn how to sustain 8 shows a week. Because if you start to become an actor that is known to call out a lot or not be able to get through long runs or, you know, have vocal issues through a run, then that becomes a liability that makes it hard to cast you. Patti LuPone talks about this. You know, when she started in Evita, she did not have the technique to do that show, and she was going out, and she was the 70s and whatever, and she had to basically relearn how to sing so that she could do that job. And she, you know, stars continue to take voice lessons, and you know, even Kristen Chenoweth is like in voice lessons. Like they're never done training, because you can be an amazing actor and an amazing storyteller, but you still have to sing 8 shows a week.
A couple people asked about inclusivity in acting and how it feels like that primarily deals with ethnicity, but they're wondering how that also deals with different body types, bigger actors, smaller actors, taller actors, shorter actors.
We are, this is going to be an ongoing, ever-changing conversation. And the first conversation the industry was ready to have was about ethnic diversity. And it's still ongoing, and it's still a discussion, but that was kind of the first way that went. The next one that started happening, which is still in its infancy, but it's still, the discussion is far more advanced than it was 5-10 years ago, is gender diversity and gender inclusivity as the world becomes more inclusive and more diverse. And simultaneously, we are having the body image conversation. Hollywood, from the beginning, and subsequently Broadway, clearly favored certain aesthetic. And it's coming out of a time and an era when the 40s and 50s and glamour and this, that, and that kind of set us off on the track we're on. I don't think, I firmly believe I don't understand why a curvier person can't be a love interest. I don't understand why a non-binary person can't be a love interest. I don't understand why a physically handicapped person can't be a love interest. And I think we're step by step starting to have the right conversations, and it's just going to take time, and it's going to take people speaking up, and it's going to take it's going to be a constant challenge, and it's one that I feel strongly about, and I know that my colleagues feel strongly about, is about this inclusivity and this diversity on the stage, and wanting the art we put on the stage to reflect the real world. And there's times where somebody says, oh, well, I was just talking about this, well, they're too tall to play a high schooler. And it's like, well, or they're too big to play Maria in West Side Story, or whatever it is. And I think that we just have to continue to have the conversation and continue to challenge what has been done. And writers are starting to write with more inclusivity and diversity in mind, and directors are starting to cast that way. And I think we're heading in the right direction, but it's definitely going to be an ongoing conversation, an ever evolving one. And when we finally when we think we solve one problem, another challenge will rear its head.
What advice do you have to actors? Let's put this outside of like a COVID-19 realm that we're living in right now. Actors who've just graduated that are moving to the city, what's your advice to them on how to break into the industry? And
go to as many auditions as you can. Go to a variety of auditions. Focus on what you think you do best, and then pay attention to how the industry views you and what they think you do best. So it's like, if you find you're constantly getting called back for the 50/60 show, or you're constantly getting called back for the traditional musical theater, or you're constantly getting called back for the pop rock, or you're not getting called back for the high schoolers, but you're getting called back for the parent roles, or whatever it is, and start to pay attention, because the industry will very quickly tell you where they see you based on the callbacks you get. And that's even more important than the actual jobs you get, because you'll get more callbacks than you will jobs, of course. So pay attention to that. When you first move to the city, in addition to getting out there, pounding the pavement, you have to build a world for yourself, and you have to build a safe space. So move to the city, find a home, whether you're subletting or whether you're staying with friends, or whether you get an apartment. Find your community that is, going to be your support system. Figure out a way to be financially secure, however you do that, so that your whole life doesn't become audition to audition to audition to audition, that you have a safe space to go home to at night, that you have other things outside of the industry that you can do on the weekends, so that you kind of protect your mental health as well, and so that you're not just living for the next audition you have coming up, that you have something else to keep you active. And start figuring out the acting classes that are out there, and the voice classes and the dance classes, so that you suddenly don't go 3 years out of school and you haven't taken a single class and you are feeling rusty and you're not at the top of your game, because it can get expensive, but it's New York City, and there's so much out there at a variety of price points, that even if it's like, I'm going to the dance class at the YMCA with the Housewives of the Upper West Side, just so I stay active and I stay like, I'm doing basic ballet, but it's just so I make sure I point my toes once a week, then the muscles are at least still being flexed.
If anybody has any questions, type them up in the chat, and I'll call on you and you can unmute and ask Kevin a question. And while you're doing that, Kevin, talk to me about, so I've gone through the EPA, I've gone through the ECC, I've got a callback, I now have a packet of material that you want me to learn. What are you expecting of me in the room the next time you see me?
So the stages of after the EPAs and ECCs, the stages are screening with casting only. So that's you just coming in the room for your first time, and it's usually just me in the room. So that's step one. Step two is then a callback, or a first appointment, I should say, with the associate team. So the associate director, associate music director, and they kind of see people. Then from there, you might get a work session where they'll spend a half hour with you or an hour with you really working. And then dance calls from there, and yada, yada, yada. And then you go in front of the director, and the director and the music supervisor will see you. And then from there, you go to your final callback with the producer. So that's kind of the trajectory. With the material we send you, I'm basically, in that first screening, I'm looking for two things. I'm looking for preparation, that you actually put in the time and you came in well prepared. That doesn't mean you have to be completely memorized, but you should be familiar with it so that you're not stuck in the page and it shouldn't feel like a cold read. That you're prepared and that you're making choices. Again, like I said, like, you don't always know what we're looking for. So just make a choice, be interesting, and then let me guide you. Part of the screening process, part of the reason we do the screens is not just to all screen people that I've known and have seen a million times. It's not so much like seeing if they can do it. It's more like seeing what they do with it and then giving them the tools to then have a killer callback the next time they come in. So I especially use screens a lot to give notes and to kind of guide you in a way that I can if I just bring you straight into the creative team.
Nice, thanks for that. Jasmine, do you want to unmute yourself and ask Kevin your question?
Yes, please, thank you. So my question is, when a person of color auditions for a role that wasn't traditionally written for a person of color, so not shows like Parade due to the historical accuracy, how do you go about that casting choice, like choosing, for example, with Dear Evan Hansen, having Jordan Fisher now playing Evan compared to the previous casting choices?
What's great is the industry's gotten to a place where we are really actively seeking diverse cast. So for me, it's super exciting. Les Mis is that way. Dear Evan Hansen is that way. Aladdin, of course, is that way. Like, we are really actively searching for actors of all. Again, like I said, I want the show to reflect the world as it is. So I don't approach it any other way except to make sure that I'm not getting locked into one type for a role. Even within the family unit, mess it up. Who cares? We've gotten past that. Modern day audiences are not going to lose their mind if they come in and we say, here are 4 people that are a family, and it's a Caucasian actor, an African-American actor, an Asian American actor, and an actor of Indian descent. You know, like, audiences aren't going to blink an eye at that. And if an audience takes issue with that, then frankly, like, that's their own issue, and we just have to keep asking them to do better. So that's how we approach it. I'm always checking myself to make sure that I'm keeping things as diverse as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we're constantly trying to expand upon, is that, you know, it's not like the role is written and it's like, okay, this is the ethnic track. So whether it's African-American or Asian American or, you know, Middle Eastern or whatever, like, this is the one role. It's like, okay, well, why don't we make, you know, this role ethnic that's not normally or wasn't written to be or whatever.
Kevin, how do you feel about people putting their ethnicity on their resumes? Is that weird, or is that a thing that people do?
It's starting to become a thing. It's really tricky. I have to be really careful, to be honest, about how I answer this, because I am not allowed to ask that question. Like, legally, the United States, because when you're auditioning, it's technically it's seeking employment. So by the United States of America, when you're seeking employment, I cannot ask a whole lot of questions: age, ethnic background, sexuality, all of that stuff. So it's tricky because we're in a weird industry. So how do I cast, if I have to cast, if someone's like, well, we're doing a Vita and they have to all be actors of Latinx descent or Hispanic descent, I have to be careful, because if your last name is not obviously of that background, or you don't, even if you look obviously that background, but all I'm going on is basically your name and like what you look like, right? Like, I don't have a whole lot else to go by. I can't even really always use like your resume, because we all have like, the industry's changed. So actors have roles in their background that they wouldn't necessarily be cast in today, which is completely okay. So the ethnicity on your resume is helpful, especially if you're of mixed ethnicity and it's not always obvious. But I don't think I'm allowed to encourage that one way or the other. Is that a PC way to put that?
That's very PC.
It's a new thing that's starting to happen, and I know that there's conflicting opinions on that in the industry. So I will say that, but that's what we're dealing with.
Annie, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, please. Thank you. Hi, my name's Annie. I'm from Maryland, and I really want to build my community and my job and my life in Washington, D.C., kind of how you were talking about before, so that the only thing you're like looking forward to next is your next audition, because you have to have like a life outside of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Life in Washington, D.C. But I want to be a professional singer actress, and I'm not a big fan of living in New York for many different reasons. I just want to know what you think about starting out your career as a professional musical theater actress in the DC, Baltimore area.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, DC has a thriving theater scene, so there's a lot of opportunity for you down there. The realistic situation is, and this is my understanding, and I haven't lived in DC, so forgive me if I'm slightly off on this, but to make a full-time theater-only career in DC is harder than in New York, just because there's less to do. So if you want to do theater sometimes and other things other times, you can do that in DC. If you're gonna have more issues if you were like, I only want to do theater. I just think that eventually you're gonna need to start looking outside of DC just for quantity, I believe. But you absolutely can start your career down there. There's a lot of actors that do that. There's a lot of work to be had down there. And you can also make the decision at some point to become a New York actor if you can figure out how to get back and forth from New York as often as needed. And that's not like coming up for open calls, because that's gonna really wear you down. But if you get traction with an agent, and a lot of actors say this that live in Philly or live in DC, like, consider me a New York local. Like, I will get myself to New York for auditions when they come up. If I get hired in New York, I will figure out housing for myself. I can be hired as a New York local. Like, that's the thing. The thing that's going to trip you up the most is kind of, if you were auditioning in New York, it's going to be assumed you're a local, and you're going to get jobs where they don't offer you housing. And so if you're willing to take that burden on of, if you get cast in a show out of New York, or if you get cast out of somewhere that your point of origin has to be in New York, you'll make it work, then you can do that. If not, then you can just stay in DC and come up for the summer stock auditions where they house you anyway, and figure it out from there. But there's definitely a way to start a career in the theater in DC.
Is it a good place? So could you like build your resume there and get a lot of professional theater experience and then move to New York? Because it's hard to just come to New York with nothing. Like,
right. Yep. That's absolutely doable. And a lot of actors do that. A lot of actors do that with DC. They do it with Philly. They do it with Chicago. They do it with LA, So, I mean, LA is harder because the theater scene out here is much harder than the East Coast. But yeah, that's completely an option, and something we see frequently.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more question. And if you have a question for Kevin that we haven't gotten to, or that you just thought of, put it in the chat or email me. I will ask Kevin. We'll find some way to get you the answer. But for the last question, Sarah, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. So I've been getting some, like, in school, they tell you, be yourself, be unique. But as opposed to like dyeing your hair, it's kind of like stick to like the normal colors. And I dyed my hair pink and for a show, and it seems to be getting mixed emotions. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. Most of the time in theater, we wig you. So hair color isn't something that always I'm thinking about. Or if we really need you to dye your hair, like, I know it's a possibility. the thing is with the pink hair is it is a personality trait in a way that you're bringing in the room. And so it's sometimes hard if you're coming in for a super traditional musical to, it's one more thing I have to look past. You just walk in feeling very contemporary when you come in with pink hair. There's an edge about that. It's a statement. So it's I don't necessarily think it's, if you love your pink hair and it's working for you, then by all means keep it. I think it will help you as many times as it might not help you. But also, like, I've heard stories of like brunettes not getting a job because they only wanted to hire a blonde. Like, it's just one of those things that's a little bit like, again, you can't be in our brain. And you have to at some point like live the life you want to live, and all your life decisions can't be made based on the auditions you're going to. If you find a drastic drop off in callbacks or type of work you're getting because you've made a drastic change like that and you noticed it, then yes, there's your answer. Then you have to make the decision. But I would be interested to see if it really was that drastic of a change. I just think it just tells me some things about you that might not be appropriate for every audition you're going in for.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Kevin. We're gonna end it there. We didn't get to nearly all of the questions, but we're gonna be doing more of these. Maybe Kevin will come back and we'll keep asking questions. We have Jeff Josselson and Katya Zerlinski from Jay-Z Casting tomorrow. Pat Goodwin's gonna do on Wednesday, and there are more in the works. So keep an eye out in your email and I will send out notifications about them. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Kevin, so much for giving up some of your time.
Thank you.
Questions.
Bye all.
And I will see you all soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.